really looking forward to introduce our next speaker, Bas. I used to work at Nokia before, and this is a personal one because mobile phones, the topic is close to my heart. And it's really amazing to have Bas in person here doing this keynote. So Bas is a designer who has pioneered design for repair with a Fairphone, a modular and repairable smartphone that seeks to break apart, literally, the built-in ubiquity of the iPhone. More recently, he has co-founded circular food startup The Click. Bas believes that companies play an essential role in the transition needed to achieve a more sustainable economic system. And I reflect that Katie mentioned yesterday that books are collective action. And with Bas's initiatives, you can see companies can take action or companies can take collective action on core topics. His work has been internationally awarded and featured in various media, including CNN, the New York Times, and Der Spiegel. Over to you, Bas.
Thanks for the introduction. That was wonderful. Yeah, great to be here, and good morning, everyone. And good morning, everyone online as well. I don't know what time zone you are, but I'm really happy to be here, and I'm getting already excited. So I'm going to take off my jacket because I'll be running around stage anyway. So I'd like to start with a little anecdote. A couple of years back, a while back, we were going on holiday with the whole family. The car was packed, everything was pushed into the car. I don't know if you got the image. Yeah, I got the whole family was raiding. I have 3 kids, so it was kind of a hustle to get everything in order. And at the moment, my son came to me. My son came to me with a broken Nintendo in his hand, a Nintendo DS, and he was crying, obviously, because the Nintendo DS at the time of his life was the love of his life, you might say. And I was pretty happy with it too, because it would keep him busy on the trip. But, I have an engineering background, so I told Bo, don't worry, Daddy will fix it. So, I took the Nintendo in my hands and I started screwing. I have these electronic screwdrivers at home, so I started screwing and screwing and screwing. At a certain point, the metal dust came falling out of the screw holes. And I'm not sure if there's engineers here already, or is there anyone, well, I see you nodding already. Anyone who opened up a device with a screwdriver before, but if your screws start, falling down, metal dust, there's one thing you know for sure, you screwed up the screws. And if you screw up the screws, well, you're screwed. Because there's no way to be able to open up that device anymore. So I got really pissed, took the Nintendo, threw it against the wall. Bo was crying in the corner. That whole car full of family was pissed at me. But I got really even more pissed, because there's one thing that if you really want to get me pissed, and that is that Nintendo does not want me to open up their device. And why not? They use special screws for that. And I asked myself, why does Nintendo not want me to open up a device that I own? And my motto in life is, if you can't open it, you don't own it. And I can tell you, for people that take apart stuff, and we have some repair workshops here as well, life is getting quite frustrating at the moment. Because if you just look at one of the devices we all use, our smartphones, it gets more and more difficult to repair. Is there anyone here, is any of you who has changed the battery recently? And there can be people online, just look at your phone. Have you changed the battery recently? There's just one hand here. Have you changed it yourself? 2 hands, great. You're an engineer? You're not an engineer. How was it? Difficult? Very difficult. Okay, why was it difficult? Just too many videos, too many YouTube videos. Okay, well, there are a lot of YouTube videos for a reason, because it is difficult. So let me ask you another question. Is there anyone here any of you who has repaired the screen of their phones? Okay, oh wow, that's even more people. And how what was your experience?
I took it to someone.
You took it to someone, okay, so you had it repaired. All right. Nobody? Well, you repaired it. Was it a good experience, or what? I mean, it might be a Nokia, an old Nokia that you had. Might.
Heat things up, and then it took forever, and then I broke it again.
You heat things up. You took forever. You broke it again. Okay, so you had a similar experience that I had with my my son's Nintendo. Yeah. Well, it's very frustrating, and yeah, you might even say, the problem is, we as designers have a role in that. We design stuff really thin. And why? Because people like thin stuff. You might even say that we're suffering from smartphone anorexia. Because the thinner they get, the more problematic it gets. Because what they do is, if you have a really thin phone, well, you've been designing Nokias, right? So if you have the thinner your phone gets, all that technology has to go into that small phone. So what they do is they glue the batteries to the inside. And you can imagine it's really hard to also have the screen easily be repairable. So with the consequence that it's very hard to repair, and you have to bring it to a shop. You pay a lot of money, or you mess up your phone while watching all these different YouTube videos. And the consequence of that is that we only use phones for an average of 2 to 3 years. And that's a shame, because we can use it much, much longer if you just look at the technology and the software that we use in those phones. But you know how it works. You have a phone, you got a crack in your screen, you've been using it for 2 years already, the battery goes down, because batteries do go down after 2 years. All batteries, I can tell you, go down because of the physical proportions of batteries. And then your operator, your carrier, comes with a proposal. They say, you get this new shiny phone if you extend your contract. So what you do, you get that new shiny phone, and you think, well, you know what, I'll use this phone, toss it in my drawer with the rest of the old phones. Is there anyone who has a drawer with old phones? Basically everyone. So you toss it with the rest of the old phones, and the result of that only 10 to 15% of the phones that are in those drawers, are not in those drawers, get recycled. And it's a huge waste. Because from a sustainability point of view, it's extremely simple. If you use your phone twice as long, you need to produce only half the amount of phones. And you have half the amount of electronic waste. Electronic waste is the fastest growing waste stream that we know at the moment. There's more phones than people in this world. And then for the mathematicians under us, it's about half the cost. It just costs you half if you use your phone twice as long. It's a bit more maybe, but... So it's in essence, it's quite stupid that we actually use these phones for a very short time. So that's why Fairphone, why we made phones that are easily repairable. We made them like Lego, so that you can take a screwdriver. For the battery, you don't need a screwdriver. You can just replace your battery. With a screwdriver, you can take off the screen. You can take off every part that might break. And we've isolated, so it's very cheap to order a new part online and change it. We give 5 years warranty on the phone, on all the hardware. We give 8 years guaranteed software upgrades, because you want your software to also be in line with your hardware. But the sole reason that we want you to use your phone as long as possible. Because if you use your phone twice as long, you reduce the carbon footprint of that product with 30%. Because most of the harm, when you have the phone in your hand, has already been done. So we make these phones in a different way than the whole industry. But what if that whole industry is still making components and phones like clockwork, and they're selling them? That's why in 2013, when we just started Fairphone, I wrote a letter to Frans Timmermans. And he was the Euro Commissioner at the time that was setting up this Eco-Design Directive. You might have heard about it. Eco-Design Directive is a directive that says that all electronics, or most electronic equipment, should have repairable items and should have the components on stock for a certain amount of times. But they didn't want to include the smartphones, so I told them, please include smartphones in this one. And to my surprise, I got an answer from the EU Commission. And they say, we'll take it into account. And I was pretty happy with that. But then I never heard back. Until last year. And this made me really happy. Last year I read that there's a new EU law that will force every phone manufacturer to make the battery at least replaceable, to have repairable components. So in short, it's part of the Eco-Design Directive. And I'm not saying that that letter made that whole thing happen, but there was a whole lobby for that. But it took a long time, but we did it. It's in there. And what made me really happy and put a smile on my face when I read this, Nokia is taking Fairphone head-on repairability. And why that is so cool is that it means that Nokia, for sure, they know that this law is coming, so they must make something that's already fitting that law. But also, they see that it's also a good proposition for consumers. So there is something changing. And why did it put a really big smile on my face? Because this is what we always had in mind when we started Fairphone. We want to raise awareness, come up with solutions that we can do ourselves, set an example, all these innovations, show that it's possible, and then motivate the industry to follow. And Fairphone has campaigning in the DNA. That raising awareness is how we started. Back in 2011, we were thinking about setting up a campaign around the impact of smartphones on people and the environment. But the question is, where do you start? A phone has over 1,000 components on the bill of materials that we have in our first factory that puts the phone together. And all these components are made by hundreds and hundreds of factories. And these hundreds and hundreds of factories, they have their suppliers. And then there's more than 50 minerals that go into a phone. And I can tell you, it's not a banana that we're talking about here. It's a very, very complex supply chain. So where do you start? And as a designer, I know one thing for sure, and it's something that fascinates me and has always fascinated me, is that everything we use, we make, everything we see, everything we eat, either comes from the ground, as stones, as minerals, or grows on the ground. So also a phone just comes from the ground. We are able to make something as complex as a phone by working together in an economic system, by starting to go into the ground, take it out of the soil, and make us something as complex as that phone. And there's not one individual in the whole wide world that knows the complexity of a phone by itself. So we are, in a way, working together on stuff that we wouldn't be able to do as an individual. How beautiful is that as an economic system, right? But the problem is, we got alienated from that whole process. Where do phones come from? Who made them? Where do they end up if we don't use them anymore? What kind of materials go in? We've been very good at hiding everything behind the scenes of that technology. So that's when we said, in a strategically naive way, why are we not going to make our own phone? We start in the mines, we take the stuff from the ground, and step by step, we're going to show the world what the world looks like through the eyes of a phone, see where we can make a difference, and show that it's possible to make a difference, and then get the industry to follow. And we call it Fairphone. So that's what we did. We went to the mines and we started. But let me show you what the world looks like in short before I show you what Fairphone is doing through the eyes of a phone. So this is cobalt I'm holding in my hand here. I got that from a mine in Congo. Is anyone here who knows what cobalt is being used for mainly at the moment? Yes. So the batteries, yeah. So cobalt is a super important element for our whole energy transition. This stuff is used for all the batteries you use, mobile phone batteries, but also electric vehicles. You know, your Tesla has this stuff in there. Most of this stuff comes from countries like Congo. 40–50% of the world's supply is there. And I got this from this mine. where a guy was working on this stone, and over 250,000 people in Congo are still working like this to get this stuff out of the ground so that we can have our mobile phones and drive our Teslas. But there's more going on. Tens of thousands of kids are still working in these mines. And on top of that, there's conflict. And these conflicts are related to the mining of these minerals. Millions of people have died in the last 20, 30 years in mining minerals, conflicts related to the mining of the minerals we use in our devices. And it's a huge problem, not in an ethical point of view, but also for business. And I'll show you what that means for business.
The world's biggest tech companies are being sued over child mining deaths in the Democratic Republic of Congo. A human rights group filed a lawsuit on behalf of 14 Congolese families. They accuse companies like Apple, Google, Dell, Microsoft, and Tesla from benefiting from child labor to mine cobalt. That mineral is key to powering batteries used in our cell phones, computers, and our electric cars.
CBS News launched an investigation into child cobalt miners in Congo last year, and foreign correspondent Deborah Pata exposed the horrific conditions, and now she's taking a closer look at this unprecedented lawsuit.
Kids are still doing the unthinkable in the DRC, backbreaking work even for adults. But a world away in Washington, there's new hope.
And then these minerals, we use them in factories to make those phones. And I can tell you, a lot of these factories, people are working for a minimum wage, not a living wage, and they work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week because of it. And I've been in Ghana a couple of months ago to look at where does that electronic waste end, or where do these phones end up. And a lot of these phones that are being used for Second Life, those 10–15% that we're able to use, end up in dumps like this, where people burn the phone because they can't just separate the batteries and other components from it to get the minerals out. And you can imagine it's got like all kinds of health issues and all kinds of other stuff connected to this. This is the electronic waste, the dump of the world for our electronic devices. And then you go to a conference about the newest electronics devices, and I can tell you see all kinds of colors, but you don't see green. It's all about the next bendable display, another camera in your phone, and all these kind of things. And nobody's really talking about sustainability or showing what's done. And you think by yourself, how am I going to make a difference in such a big industry as a designer, as a small player, and where do I start? And I always get to, it helps me when I get to this quote. If you think you're too small to have an impact, try going to bed with a mosquito in the room. And Fairphone wanted to be that mosquito for the whole industry. So what do you do if you want to set up a company in an industry and you don't have anything? Well, you need a story. So I took one of the stones, I went to Holland, went to KPN, the biggest operator in Holland, and I put the stone on the table, and I said, guys, listen. If you are going to buy 1,000 Fairphones already, because this will be a Fairphone, you're going to be launching partner. And everybody went silent, and I was like, oh shit, okay, they're going to kick me out again like everybody else, tell me I'm crazy. But then one guy stood up, one of the board members, and he said, I just read a book about Congo, and we need to do something about this. So magically, 2 weeks later, I had a contract in the pocket saying that KPN buys 1,000 non-existing Fairphones from a non-existing company, from a guy that never made a phone before, and to be honest, never, not even knew how to make phones. But they bought 1,000 phones, non-existing phones. And the great thing is, if KPN buys 1,000 non-existing phones, well, it's a great moment to set up a crowdfunding, because everybody thought, if KPN buys this product, well, it must be real. So what I did, I opened up a website, put a button, and we were 5 people at the time, and there was a button that said, if you buy the phone now for 325 euros, you will get it in 6 to 7 months from now, probably. And what happened, is, well, we've launched, oh yeah, let me show you the video that we launched.
You name it, we have it. But what we don't have, a clue about what's inside this stuff. We don't know where it comes from, or who made it. We know almost nothing about our stuff. That's why we started with an alternative for the thing we can't live without. Our phone. We are the people of Fairphone.
Hey.
Hello. Good day.
Hoi.
Guten Tag. Hello.
And this is what we're building. The Fairphone. As smart as other phones, but fair. Which makes it more than a phone. It's a beginning, a step in the right direction. We're making it happen. A smartphone that's made in a way that puts people and the environment first. We're already working hard on the first batch. We're almost there. And that's where you come in. To start making them, we need you to pre-order. Because by buying and owning this phone, you can make a difference. You become part of change. Buy a phone. Start a movement at fairphone.com.
Yeah, so what happened is that within 2 months, all 25,000 phones that we were going to produce were sold out. The sold out non-existing phones were being traded on eBay for double the price. And we still had no idea what we were doing. But I can tell you we were flying. This was a huge success, you can imagine. And well, what it did to me, I slept like a baby. I woke up every 2 hours and cried. Because I was a designer, I was a creative, I was a technician, but something I wasn't a businessman. I've never set up a company. You know, the most direct reports I had was my intern until then. So how the hell am I going to do this? So I was literally crying in my bed. My partner at the time looked at me and she said, "Bas, what's going on?" I said, "Well, you know, I can't do this. I really can't do this. You know what? I'll just pay back everybody their money. And then let somebody else do it. You know, we've shown that there's a demand, we've got success with the campaign, and yeah, I'm not up for this." And then she looked at me, she said, "Bas, you pussy. you will never, ever get this chance to make such a difference in your life again." Because those people, they didn't buy 25,000 phones. Those people bought 25,000 times an idea of change. And that's what you have to deliver. So you can't fail in that. You can just do your best. So I'm really happy that you told me that, because we went through, we did it. I pushed the button, transferred that money to the Chinese factory, fingers crossed, and it happened. After 1.5 years, we had 40 people working at Fairphone. We sold over 60,000 phones. We had 16 million euro turnover, and we were at the time the fastest growing technology startup in Europe. But most importantly, in 2016 already, this tiny mosquito, the smallest phone company in the world, was in the Greenpeace Greener Guide to Electronics, and we were the greenest of all global electronics companies. And that made me really happy, because this showed that as a small player, you can make that difference, just within a couple of years. And I can tell you, yes, Apple is doing pretty good as well, but Apple is the industry. This is a multi-billion-dollar company. We were a multi-million-dollar company, which was already amazing, but it was nothing. And still we did that. So moving further, in 2018, I quit as a CEO because I wanted to sleep again. And we're now with around 150 people. We've sold almost 500,000 phones. We're a profitable company. We make 40-50 million turnover a year. And we're a successful company. And we just launched our Fairphone 5, which I'd be happy to show you here right now.
5 is designed for you, made fair. It's got 3 amazing 50-megapixel cameras to shoot in wide and ultra-wide. It has blazing fast 5G and comes with a 5-year warranty. It's future-proof. It has a special chipset that guarantees software updates for the next 8 years.
Nah, do phones even last that long?
This one does. It's easy to repair because it's modular. You can replace the parts yourself in case you break something. It's 100% electronic waste neutral. It's made in fair factories. It's Fairphone's most sustainable phone yet. That's why they say it's designed for you, made fair.
So it's a great phone. I believe it's a great phone, but I'm not very objective, obviously. But more importantly, I think what is great is all the projects we're doing in the supply chain. And I won't run through everything right now. I'll just briefly touch upon them before I end up this presentation. But because it's a very complex supply chain we're talking about here, and Fairphone has a holistic approach, we look at all the areas, and they're like these communicating vessels. Because if we focus on the working conditions in the mines, we can do that as much as we want and get rid of all the child labor in the world and create world peace. We still know that mining is bad for the environment. So you also have to focus on recycling, reuse, and all these other areas. So on the materials area, we have just set up a program around cobalt where also Tesla and Google, after they got sued for child labor, joined our program, and we're jointly working now, collaborating with the biggest companies in the world to improve the conditions in Congo around cobalt mining. We are the first ones that use fair trade credits of silver and gold in the phone. We have 100% recycled plastics in the phone. And we're working on many, many more materials, both recycling and virgin mining, as they call it. We're the only one that has on a factory level, has a living wage program in the electronics industry where we pay more, a bonus, on every phone to make sure that people have a living wage instead of a minimum wage. Yes, we also take phones back. We are e-waste neutral, as we say. We take as much phones back in weight as we put into the market. But I also have to say, recycling, especially in our industry, is just plainly stupid. Recycling is basically waste management. It's about collecting phones, putting it on a big pile, putting it in an oven, burning it, and getting the minerals out of it. That's what we do. So it's a shame, right? If you look at all the components and all the work and all the stuff that went into making that product. So one of the last resorts you do is recycling. And that's why we focus on long-lasting design, which I've told you already about. And the great thing is that we can also apply all these principles, all these areas that we're doing to other products. And we've just launched our headphones, which are repairable, which also have all these beautiful projects in the supply chain. But we can make all the repairable products we want. But the problem is, we still make money by selling as much phones as possible, right, in a way. So we have an intrinsic dilemma as Fairphone. And it's a philosophical dilemma. With everything we create, we're also destroying. It's a philosophical dilemma that every human being is dealing with by being on this earth. So we'd like to embrace that as a company. So what we've done is that we put success indicators on a company that are conflicting. We don't believe in always that win-win sustainability thing. We say we want to sell as many phones as possible, but we also want people to use the phone as long as possible. And that is a bomb in the head of a salesperson, I can tell you, of a marketeer. Because that means that I can't sell phones to people that already have a Fairphone. I can't even sell a phone to people who don't need a Fairphone. So it's really challenging ourselves to go beyond all of these things. And that means that as a designer, I had to think how to design a company that way, how to get shareholders on board for that. And right now, everybody has signed up for these dilemmas that we put into the companies, these paradoxes. Because that's where the business model really starts to work. Because that whole challenge has caused us also to innovate on our business model. We just launched a subscription service where we have people use the phone with a monthly fee. We keep the materials, the phone is still ours, and we lower the price of your subscription the longer you use your phone, and we lower the repair cost the longer you haven't had any repairs. So we can really play with you having the phone as long as possible and can align it intrinsically also with our business model, because we don't want you to get another phone because it costs you money if we have to provide you with a new phone. But on that note as well, we can make phones that are repairable as a company. We can have business models in which we can, provide the best services for you to keep holding on to your products longer. But we also need people to want to use their products longer. And for that, I would like to quote a scientist who has been working his whole life on trying to solve the biggest environmental problems of this time. Gus Spath. And Gus Spath, he said, I always thought that the biggest environmental problems, the top environmental challenges that we have, are biodiversity loss and global warming. And I thought we would solve all of that with science. But boy, was I wrong. The top environmental problems of our time are selfishness, greed, and apathy. And we can't solve that with science. We can't solve that with legislation. We can't solve that with design and innovation and technology. For that, we need a cultural transition. And I believe at the core of that cultural transition is reestablishing a healthy relationship between people and the products that we use. Because in the end, the most sustainable phone is the phone that you already own. Thank you very much.
Take a couple of questions.
I'm good for questions if the time allows it.
Yeah, just do a couple of questions.
Sure, yeah.
Hi, Bas. Thanks for the talk. It's really, really great. I've been following your work for quite a long time, since you was in Bethnal Green Ventures, so it's nice to see you here. One of the things that you mentioned about the business model and the challenges that you guys see in making money. Do you see a lot of customer loyalty in your product, and do you take that into account when you're looking at the business case that you're making, customer retention?
Yeah, that's a very, very good one, because I think that's where a huge opportunity still lies, right? So we've created the business on plainly selling phones. And like I said, there's where the paradox, the dilemma is. But we're now, as a stable company, profitable, growing. We've just got quite a big investment of 50 million to also invest into marketing and brand awareness and everything. We also know that with that growth, that dilemma will be even squeaking more and more. I also have to say, I believe that even with a phone you can use 5 to 10 years, you can build a business. Right? So even with those cycles, you don't need to have phones, switch every 2 years. There's still a big enough market. But also, our model allows, and that's the brilliant part, allows for customer loyalty. It really allows for people, because we open up that device in a way that we want people to connect with the device. We also have people that really connect with the brand. And I always say, the only people buy a Fairphone not just for that phone, they buy it because of what we stand for and the mission we have. And that also makes us different from any other phone company, because our mission is not something that other phone companies have. So that loyalty is on that level, but also on the fact that we have phones that last longer. Yes, obviously you keep people involved with your company a lot longer. So there's a huge opportunity there for also getting more and more services. So you can imagine that also people paying for certain upgrades of the phone or for certain upgrades of the software would be a business model that works.
And maybe one more from the audience.
Hi Bas, thank you very much for that amazing talk. It was really inspirational and I really enjoyed it. I just want to ask you, what is the demographics of your customer profile? What age? I have two older teenage sons, and anyone with teenagers in the room, they want the latest phone that comes out. Apple launches one, seems to be on an annual basis.
Yeah.
What is the sort of average age of your consumer, and how do we go about educating the younger generation to buy a Fairphone?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. It also has to do, so who is your target group also has to do with the phase your company is in, not just with us choosing who that group is, because obviously making phones is quite difficult, I found out. So our first phone was shit. I can really be very straightforward. I mean, a lot of people bought it, and it was great that it got us off the ground. And sorry for people that bought it that it was a shit phone. But you're also learning while you're going. And then the second phone was way too ambitious, because it was I could take it on stage. I could take off the screen with one hand. So you learn there, and then the phone. So everything in that phone, you start learning how to run a company, and then that phone turns out to be a certain phone for a certain group of people that have certain demands. Also looking at what you can offer as a company. We couldn't just say, well, let's offer a phone that does all the 3D graphics and for all the gamers and has a fantastic selfie cam. We are at that point now. Luckily, after 5 phones, we're at a point where we say we know the phone making business, we know how to do that. So the demographics might change. So that is one part. It's not a choice we have. But the demographics that we have, and it's really funny that we didn't know what would happen when we launched Fairphone, but more than half of the phones were being sold to Germans. So we were like, oh, okay, wait a minute. So even like Germany, UK, France, Switzerland, but not necessarily in Holland. So we're bigger in those markets. And then there's a mix between men and women, 50-50. And I think there's also, yes, there's people that can afford the risk of buying a phone that might not be top-notch working and by a new company in the beginning. But we're also getting at a point that we can say we make good products. So for the future, I believe that we can address those, also teenagers, and also with the marketing budgets we have now to attract more of those kind of marketing activities, and the product will support that, because we got a kick-ass selfie cam now. I'm pretty sure it will work.
Thank you so much, Bas. And online, there was some really, really heated discussion and some really admiration for what you had to say. I think particularly what you said about sometimes the most sustainable phone that is the one that you have now. So thank you so much, Bas. That's been brilliant. So I suppose an observation that we've been talking a lot about collaboration over these couple of days, and so much collaboration, so much coming together really is around creating new things, creating for this selfishness, for this greed that you spoke about, Bas. So I suppose one of the questions for our break and for the discussion online is, how do we come together? How do we collaborate for repair and for regeneration? And where might we need to design new ways of working together, new business models, and new forms of collaboration? I also encourage you to zoom out a little bit and see where some of the things that Bas has had to say today link with what Dori had to say at the end of the day yesterday, particularly the link around conflict and technological development. And then to zoom out and think, actually, we often think there's a lot of complex maths in designing for Planet, but just use things for double the time, and you half the cost, and you half the impact. And maybe we can get away around our fear of maths from just halving and doubling. What a big day we have ahead of us. We have talks both online and in the room around how to create green theatre sets, around designing with nature, around designing for future mobility and for future foods. For those of you joining online, you've got a choice now. On the how-to channel, there is Carrie Stockholm Poolsgaard, who's starting a session on how to demolish buildings with care so that you can reuse the materials, followed by how to be inspired by biology in your design with Veronica Capsali. On the collaboration channel, Design Council's very own Emily Wyman and Hugo Jameson are now starting a discussion about how to design with communities, how communities design, and how professional designers can work best with grassroots organisations. We're going to take a break now for those of us here in the room in Norwich, and we'll see those of you online either back here at 11:30 or on a how-to or collaboration channel.